Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Dropping Pebbles in the Pond. And whether you're watching live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, or wherever else you're watching, or maybe you're watching the recording, welcome one and all. It's good to have you here. As you'll have gathered, this episode is called Rebel Rousing, the Flourishing Way. And before I get stuck into the content, I'd love to know where you're joining from. So please pop that in the chat. My brilliant team who are managing all the things so that I don't get distracted, thank you team, will share comments and questions as they become relevant and I should be able to see them. So settle in with your brew or your favourite tipple, depending on what time of the day it is for you. Arm yourself with a notebook and pen because I anticipate that this episode will provoke some thoughts and questions. Now, during the launch show, I explained why I was calling forward the sassy introverts, those who feel ready to contribute to the rebellion. And if you've not caught that first episode, that launch show yet, make sure you double back because it does set the context for this whole series. What I'm doing in this particular show is developing the rebellion theme, this time with some specific ideas as to how to rebel positively. As you might expect, the ideas are aligned with the good rebel approach that we talked about last time. But in particular, I'm focusing us as sassy introverts on three of those positive rebel things, really. The first is that I'm focusing us on being mission focused, not me focused. And I know that actually being self-focused is pretty unusual for an introvert. And we still need that mission to focus on. I'm also focusing us on changing unhelpful, outdated, and frankly biased rules that rather than merely breaking them, we're going to change them. And this is sometimes more difficult as the rules are largely unspoken and unwritten, as you might have seen in some of the pre-show material. But I can tell you, they're no less evident to us as introverts because we experience them regularly. And finally, I'm helping us to pursue worthwhile opportunities rather than just complaining. Nobody likes a complainer, right? So now I've got my sassy pants on. Let's spend a few moments understanding rebel rousing, because a bit like rebellion, it's another of those terms that can have negative connotations. Not in my mind, though, because I consider rebel rousing to be an entirely positive action because I'm talking about it as a catalyst for positive change, for personal empowerment and for progress. In my case, the positive change is shifting the extroversion bias so that we name those unwritten, unspoken rules so that we introverts are more likely to be able to play to our strengths authentically so that we can play on a level playing field. So in a way, the rebel rousing that I'm talking about is advocating for justice because I'm standing up against injustice, against discrimination and against oppression that we experience through the extroversion bias. I'm prepared to challenge the status quo. You know that one of my personal qualities really is that kind of gutsy, to be quietly gutsy. And that's what enables me to stand up against those things. I'm prepared to challenge the status quo through that and demand fair treatment for us as introverts. And if I raise sufficient awareness and mobilize others to the cause, so much the better. This rebel rousing could be what brings us necessary changes so that we create a more equitable workplace. And I'm absolutely sure that I'm unlikely to be able to do that on my own. So the rebel rousing, I need to engage other people in that. And this is about celebrating authenticity and individuality by encouraging people to embrace their unique identities, perspectives, and voices. It's time to resist the pressure to conform as we pave the way for greater acceptance of diversity and the celebration of differences so that we foster a more inclusive and tolerant society. There'll be more to come on that later on. My rebel rousing is also driven by this mission that empowers introverts by giving them a voice. I always said in my TEDx talk that I'm prepared to be the voice of the unheard introvert, but I also need to invite and encourage others to use their voice too, so that we have a platform to advocate for our rights and our interests. This rebel rousing has the potential to galvanize collective action and solidarity, fostering a sense of empowerment amongst we introverts who may have previously felt marginalized or voiceless. I'm sure many of us have seen on social media the protest sign meme that says, "You know it's serious when the introverts show up." Well, here we are. Here I am, prepared to be counted. And through our collective efforts, communities with a common cause can effect meaningful change and improve our circumstances. You see, my deepest hope and heartfelt intention is that our rebel rousing will help to drive social and organizational progress, social and organizational change. We may not be a civil rights movement, but we are advocating for our right to be valued for who we are. Who's to say that even as a bunch of introverts, we're not capable of shaping the course of history? Does that feel a bit big and scary? Well, so it should do, because enough is enough. We've been through enough. And if through our passion, determination, and resilience, we inspire others to join our cause, just think about the benefits that we can bring to up to 50% of humanity, the 50% who, like us, identify as introverts. I happen to believe that it's time to change many of the rules that we've been subjected to in the workplace, the rules that favour the extrovert ideal, whatever that is, and the rules that have frankly compounded and even strengthened the bias. They are mostly opinions wrapped up as fundamental truths and disguised as norms of behaviour. Things like, well, if they don't speak up, they must have nothing to say. If they don't push themselves forward, they must lack ambition. I could go on, but actually what we need to do is notice the rules, the unwritten, unspoken rules that we're subjected to regularly. And if we kind of everyday, normal, if there is such a thing, regular introverts think that it's tough, imagine how it is for post-menopausal introverts. The invisible, the ones who really feel written off. The ones who feel like, sorry, did somebody say something? Who's that over in the corner? Now, even as I say that, I'm aware that some people won't even know what I'm talking about. But here's what I do know. Introverts will have a felt sense of knowing what it feels like, even if they struggle to articulate it. So let's be a force for positive change by challenging injustice, by promoting individuality and driving process. Let's agree on what rules need changing, which rules are not working and why, and what's the impact of those unwritten, unspoken rules. Here's the thing though, rebel rousers need something to stand behind. Otherwise, they just become a rabble. Rebel rousers need a cause, a mission, personal or otherwise. And what comes to mind for me here is a manifesto. Now, a manifesto is a public declaration of intentions, motives, or views. We're most used to seeing them from a political party or a government or an organisation or a not-for-profit charitable cause. I do have a work in progress manifesto for Flourishing Introverts, but I've recently been enraged enough to complement my manifesto for Flourishing Introverts with a personal manifesto. Why enraged? Isn't that a bit strong, you might think? Well, there's just so much being spouted by so-called news outlets and thought leaders that I and many others disagree with. There was a time when I would have swallowed back my disagreement, rather like I had to swallow hard to eat rhubarb when I was a kid or oysters as an adult. Some may love them. I don't. I'd have kept my mouth shut and my head down thinking, who am I to? That's the inferiority complex that Caroline McHugh refers to. These days, I'm more secure in who I am, and I know that I'm entitled to have my own views. And I'm entitled to express them as long as they don't hurt or defame anybody else. So much as I'd like to give a few names right now, the names of what I'm going to talk about, the people who said it will remain unspoken. Here are some examples of things that enraged me as they crossed my desk this week. Firstly, there was an article asking, can workplaces have too much psychological safety? And the conclusion of the article was yes. Talk about a fast facepalm moment. It explored the question, is psychological safety always good? And apparently they did some research that looked at a range of typical jobs in different settings. And of course, they decided that it's not always good to have too much psychological safety because productivity can drop. Well, maybe that's because people operate out of fear when there's no or low psychological safety. But does that make it okay? Certainly not with me. The point this author missed completely was that it's down to the individual to determine what creates safety for them. It's not a blanket rule about now we've created psychological safety. We have to understand what it means from an individual's perspective. Many of you know that I'm a huge fan of Dr. Tim Clark, and just today he posted about psychological safety with this important question. Is it expensive to be yourself? He says we're constantly trying to figure out if we can be ourselves because psychological safety means it's not socially, emotionally, politically or economically expensive to be yourself. I'll share a bit more about this in the after show Zoom room, so do remember to sign up for that. Team, if we can pop the link in the chat for people to sign up for that now, that would be brilliant. Yeah, it's up on the screen. I can see it now. Now, clearly the authors of this first article are happy for being who we really are to come at a high cost. We're back to thinking about head count, not heart count. And that's really not okay with me. Next, there was a very active thread on LinkedIn about authenticity just being decadence. Talk about pompous. Yes, thank you. Comment coming up about how telling it is in today's metrics. Comments included that it's unwise to present your true self too much of the time. Sorry, what? It was a very academic discussion and much of it went over my head. And that doesn't prevent me from having a view. In the past, I would have shuffled away into a corner, berated myself for not being able to join the academic debate. But for me, authenticity as an introvert is about being myself and us being adult enough in organizations to understand that we are different, that diversity matters, that not having to bend myself out of shape to fit in is not an unreasonable expectation. And if you think that those first two examples were bad enough, here's the third that enraged me. It was that, has DEI gone too far? We now have an anti-DEI movement gaining traction, and certain billionaires stating that DEI is just another word for racism. Shame on anyone who uses it. Now you might understand why a manifesto seems to be part of my response to the rage that I felt. And a manifesto serves several purposes. It helps us to clarify purpose and values. It helps to inspire action. It helps to communicate ideas. It helps to set agendas. And the Flourishing Introvert Manifesto will certainly do all of that. So why do I need a personal manifesto as well? Well, I feel it will be useful to keep me aligned when things get difficult, which they do quite often, especially when we've got the anti-DEI movement, when we've got people thinking that we don't need psychological safety. A personal manifesto, from my perspective, helps with my clarity of purpose because it involves articulating my beliefs, my values, and my intentions clearly. And these emerge from deep introspection about who I really am, what I stand for, and what I intend to achieve in life. This clarity will serve to guide my decisions and actions when things get tough and help me stay focused on what truly matters. That level of clarity also provides direction and motivation, my roadmap for life. And that keeps my actions aligned even through the peaks and valleys of a flourishing life, as Dr. Lynn Sutz explains it. And a personal manifesto is a dynamic document. It reflects my personal growth and changing priorities, changing perspectives and experiences. So it isn't fixed in time. So we all have the opportunity, A, to create a personal manifesto that's going to guide us. And we may also choose to share that manifesto with others. Because if we do, it can help them to understand us better and deepen our connections with other people. And in turn, that might help them to, or inspire them even to reflect on their own purpose in life. So a personal manifesto is a powerful tool for self-discovery, self-expression, and personal development. It can help lead to a more intentional, fulfilling life aligned with your true purpose. Now, who wants to know about how to go about creating a manifesto? It involves several steps, and that's what we're going to be explaining in the Zoom room. So if you haven't yet registered, please do. I think the team are going to pop it up on the screen any minute now. But basically, if you go to the Flourishing Introverts website, and you can see there, click Media Hub. So navigate along the top bar to Media Hub, then select the Pebbles in the Pond, which is the show you're watching, and then click Sign Up to fill out the form. May sound a bit long-winded, but we know that we need to be safe in Zoom rooms, so it's better to be safe than sorry. Now, what's today's pebble? It's here ready to drop in the pond. Can you imagine what today's pebble is going to be that's going to help create those ripples of positive change? Well, it's got to be that your voice matters. My voice matters. If we allow ourselves to be drowned out by the loud, opinionated, closed-minded ones, we'll be in the shadows forever. And I don't know about you, but I don't belong in the shadows. No one puts Jojo in the shadows. Well, not for very long anyway. So let's just drop that pebble and watch the ripples go out as we find our own voices and start to surface those unspoken, unwritten rules that actually hold us back, and which through our own personal manifestos we can help to shift. So until next time, bon courage, mon brave. Let's get those voices heard through the lens of our own manifesto. Thank you.